Morning, Year 8. So we're continuing with our Gothic Fiction, and thank goodness this is our last online lesson. I'm so excited to actually see you all and be able to teach you face to face. So which tension building techniques did we have a look at last lesson in Dracula? Make some notes, move on to the next slide to have a look at the answer. So last lesson, it was all about analysing the different tension building techniques that have been used in Dracula. So what you're going to do now is you're going to have a go at using your own tension building techniques to continue the story of Dracula. Okay, so later on in the book, Harker goes in search of the Count through the cellars of the castle. So I'm going to read you a little passage, and then your task for this lesson is going to be to see if you can continue it. Okay, we are going to plan, so don't rush into this. And you're going to see if you can use some tension building techniques. So I descended, minding carefully where I went, for the stairs were dark, being only lit by loopholes in the heavy masonry. At the bottom there was a dark tunnel-like passage, through which came a deathly, sickly odour, the odour of old earth newly turned. As I went through the passage, the smell grew closer and heavier. At last I pulled open a heavy door which stood ajar, and found myself in an... ... You've got to pick it up from there. So I want you to continue this passage exploring what Harker finds in the cellar, okay? And I want you to try and use as many of the techniques we have looked at as you can. So as we've spoken about previously, planning is absolutely the pathway to perfection, okay? Especially with writing a piece like this that I want quite a lot from, okay? So the first thing I would like you to do is to copy out the table here. And I want you to think about each of these sections. So when Jonathan Harker has gone into the cellar of Dracula's castle, what are his first impressions of the cellar? Can you tell me what he sees, what he smells? Okay, how does it look around him? And then I want to know Harker's reaction to the setting. So how does he feel? You know, what does he do next? Is he moving forwards towards something? Is there something that's grabbed his attention and he wants to find out more about it? Paragraph 3, what does he discover? So that thing that's grabbed his attention and he's moved towards it, what is it? Why is it down there? And then paragraph 4, Harker's reaction to his discovery. So whatever it is he's found, how is he going to respond to it? Now your task is to try and use as many of these tension building techniques that we looked at last lesson as you can. So can you hold back some information? Can you show not tell? Can you use any contrasts? Can you make sure you include the narrator's emotional reaction? Can you focus on any strange details? And can you leave the reader with unanswered questions? Okay. Now this should take you the whole lesson. I would suggest you spend 10 minutes planning and then the rest of the time writing. So just as a little bit of a helper, good planning is really important, okay? And it is important to plan before you start writing, and most of the best pieces of creative writing are planned. Now planning can be done really well or it can be done really poorly. So good planning would look something like this, okay? So in paragraph 1, I'm thinking about my first impressions of the cellar. So a dark room with a low ceiling, which contrasts with his high room in the tower. So I've already used a contrast. Everything is covered in dust with a single set of footsteps. Harker wonders who has caused them and when. So we could think about the narrator's emotional reaction. Absolute silence with only an occasional drip of water. Okay, so the black are obviously my initial ideas. The red are there when I've made a conscious decision to look at these have you planned for sections and I've included them in. And good planning should be like that. When you do a good plan, it makes writing a lot easier because then all I've got to do is develop this a little bit further, have an eye into a description. Your paragraphs don't need to be overwhelmingly long. They just need to make sure that they have plenty of description in them and that you're really honing in on what Jonathan finds in the cellar. So here's a reminder of your starting paragraph. Make sure that you've read through it and you understand what's happening so far. So he's walked down, so he's in a castle at the moment. He's walked down the steps. He's found this cellar. Obviously there's something in the cellar that he's not happy with. You've got to tell me what he finds. Remember that Dracula is a vampire novel, so obviously our expectations might be that there's coffins down there that Dracula might be asleep in. Maybe there's bats down there, that maybe that's Dracula who's turned into the bat. You might find some dead bodies down there of people that he's killed. Maybe there's somebody who's about to turn into a vampire down there. You know, there's lots of ideas as to what he could find in a cellar. Cellars are dark, dingy places. You know, the perfect Gothic fiction setting. So this is a really good task for you to do. So you need to write it all. The fantastic thing is that when you actually write it, you can bring it into the academy and I can mark it. So that's really, really good, because I'm going to get to see you next week. Okay, so make sure you finish this task today and then make sure you complete the Show My Homework quiz too.